What's the biggest elephant you've ever seen in a room? I was at a party once where a girl cheated on her boyfriend with the host of the party. Her boyfriend was at work and they were really loud so everyone knew. Well, fast forward an hour or two to her boyfriend knocking on the door to pick her up. That crap was the most uncomfortable I have ever been. I cut those people off and told the boyfriend the day after. Not sure if it was the right thing to do, but I reasoned, if it was me in that situation, I would want to know. Friend had filed for divorce. Her husband hadn't been served the papers so he didn't know yet, but everyone else knew it was coming and they came to her party together. That's effed up. A friend of mine gave his ex-girlfriend and the girl he cheated on her with a ride home at the same time after a party. Silent car ride the entire way until the ex got out. She sarcastically said, "This was fun, we should do this again." People now don't realize how much less awkward smartphones make things. At least these days you can play Candy Crush on your phone and not just sit there awkwardly staring off into nothing. The general manager at my work was having an affair with the accountant. His wife was the food and beverage director at the same place. He's an Asian man with dark skin and black hair. The accountant is a blonde white lady. Her 3 kids came to our company Christmas party. 2 of them were tall, blonde, white looking kids, but the other one had dark skin, jet black hair, and looked like a skinny Asian kid. He was the spitting image of our general manager. Everybody noticed. It was the subject of everybody's conversation that night. I think even the GM's wife caught on. She ended up leaving the party early without saying anything to anybody, which was unusual for her. Oh yikes. At my first post-uni job, one day, I'm called in to learn a whole bunch of stuff about a system that only Dave knows about. No idea why. I'm totally out of my depth and this is out the blue. I take notes for a few hours. At noon, the meeting abruptly ends out of nowhere. I go back to my desk. 15 minutes later Dave walks past all of us, picks up some stuff from his desk, says bye guys and leaves. Only I respond with see you later Dave. Apparently everyone knew Dave was being fired except me. I had a job where I was trained by the guy I was hired to replace and my manager kept telling me to take what he was saying with a grain of salt because he is a bad employee and getting fired. I didn't know any of this until after I started. I really needed the job so stayed on but immediately started to plan to next moves out of there. My senior year in high school, the band director was freaking one of my classmates. We students knew it. The band director and my classmate barely tried hiding their relationship. It was almost done in the open. The faculty knew too. Everybody knew, except the band director's wife, who worked at the same high school. Guy invites his mistress to his wedding after party, sits next to her and spends more time talking to her than his wife. A regular came into a bar I worked at after the other regulars. About 7 of them showed me and 2 other bartenders on shift the mimicking videos his wife had made with his brother. Reading this comment is like getting repeatedly punched in the face. I had a father talk to me at parent-teacher night one year. He had cheated on his pregnant wife years ago, but everything was okay now. Still with wife, but his side chick had gotten pregnant also. I had both son and daughter in my class, but they didn't know they were related. The daughter just didn't know her father and had been eventually adopted by her mother's husband. Anyway, I was told I'm letting you know so if they start getting interested in each other, you know, romantically, you should squash it like a bug. So we had a nightmare producer years back at my company, just played solitaire on his computer all day and his team had devolved into a total mess. So he'd moved up from a state away and his family was still at the old place for a few months. Turns out he'd taken the opportunity of living away from his family to hook up with his old flame. Our company was having an employee board game night. Significant others are welcome. And he brings his girlfriend in and introduces her to everyone. We all know he's married with kids, mind you. Super awkward. Anyway, flash forward a few weeks, and he sends out a team-wide email from his company account that he's bringing his wife and kids in for a tour and to not mention his girlfriend. Fucking oof, he's lucky I wasn't on his team, I wouldn't have stood for that crap. So he walks his family through pretending to be the perfect family man and you could cut the tension with a knife. He ended up bailing on his family as soon as they'd uprooted their lives and moved up to join him. Real piece of crap. Last year one manager Robert became obsessed with, sexually harassed and stalked a young female co-worker but somehow managed to keep his job. Fast forward to the start of this year and my company has mandatory anti-sexual harassment training and the name of the harasser in the training example is Robert. Big freaking elephant in the room. Yes, I would have made it Bobrit for sure. My mum left my dad. I was 12. She left him a letter on the fireplace explaining what she had done. I was sat in that room, on my own waiting for my dad to come home and read the letter. Ah dude, that sounds like a heavy memory to carry. I'm sorry. A girl in my social circle broke up with her husband and father of her children and shacked up with this crazy guy and for about 4 months was all full of comments on Facebook and in conversations. You don't get to judge my love and I'm finally doing what I want for me for a change so you shut the frick up and all that. And then one day she just wanders in with her husband. They're back together. Former friend was cheating on his girlfriend. He took the paramour to her party and introduced her as his girlfriend, told her he loved her and so on, all while the actual GF was left at home. Everyone knew but didn't say anything. Despite that they were all mutual friends who worked in the same industry. I ended up telling her shortly after that incident, and they ended things. He and I aren't really friends anymore for, probably, unrelated reasons. A guy in my extended circle of friends has the hobby of metaphorically rubbing salt and acid into others' wounds. He really pushes them to the point where violence is just about to happen and he really pulls no punches, no respect for personal circumstances. Your parents just died is no reason for him to really rub it in. People tell him one of these days someone will hit you hard. You realize that, to which he said, well, those who are so primitive to be triggered by a few words will get sued. Just this weekend after he played another of these games with someone the table were turned on him. He wanted to go to the bathroom, the guy next to him had to stand up to let him through. Instead he just said nah, gotta finish my drink first, with just about one sip left in it. In only 10 seconds this lit turd snapped completely, pushed the guy from his chair causing 3 people to get soaked in beer and broken glass all over the floor and the walls that were painted just a week ago, full of beer and colorful cocktails. He ran off immediately. The next day I met his friends, not him again, to help clean up the mess at the bar and paint the walls again. None of his friends said anything about what he did. They acted like it was normal to clean up after a grown man throwing a tantrum for having his own game thrown back at him. I had a friend like that and they are exhausting if not boring. When you realize that your stock phrase when someone mentions him is he really isn't that bad, then you realize he might just be. So my boss, VP, had a 1-year anniversary lunch. Later that week he recommended someone for the open position of his boss, CTO, who got hired. CTO announced tomorrow's lunch will be catered in the office. Next day right before lunch CTO announces he decided to have a flatter reporting structure so VP will be let go. VP was there for the lunch and ate with us. Exactly 1 week after his anniversary lunch. I had one in my cab. I was driving a truck taking freight to a regional town about 4 hours drive away. I left the main depot at 3:30 am and got to the town at 7:30 am. Then went to sleep in a caravan until the return trip at 3 pm, arriving at the main depot at 7 pm. Then I could go home for a while before going back to do it again. It was a crappy existence. One day the operations manager calls me. He tells me that he's got a guy who is giving him the shoots, but he doesn't actually have grounds to sack him. He wants this guy to take over my run, and I have to train him for 1 night, and he's hoping that by giving him a crappy run he'll quit. In return, I get a sweet changeover run, where I'll be getting more money, no split shift, and I'll be home in my own bed every day. So yeah, I'm driving, making small talk, acting like I'm just a dude showing another dude the ropes, all the while knowing that this guy is on the out, and I got the feeling that he kinda knew what was going on as well. As it happened, he didn't quit. About a month later he verbally abused the operations manager, a woman of the company we were contracted to, instantly sacked. I like how your operations manager basically admitted to you that your shift was so crappy he was giving it to someone to make them want to quit. My mom told me 2 days before Christmas that she was going to leave my dad after the holidays. I had to sit through Christmas dinner with them both knowing what was going to happen. He had no idea. My dad's not perfect, but he's a good guy, and it killed me not to say anything. My mom was telling me that he had previously been violent, and that I couldn't tell him because he could lash out. I've never seen him raise a finger to her, but what else could I do in that situation? Less than 24 hours after she left, she moved back in and treated him like garbage. My dad resented me for not saying anything. My mom blamed everything on me, despite the fact that she left to be with her online lover, who turned out to be a scammer from Ghana. Eventually things subsided, mainly because my family sweeps everything under a rug. Eventually that rug is just on top of a pile of garbage. I understand the frustration, but not your situation. My married cousin brought his girlfriend to Thanksgiving dinner, introduced her to everyone as his girlfriend. Most awkward Thanksgiving yet. It was at my great uncle's funeral. Everyone in my family is extremely close. Everyone knows everyone. So when we saw a young 20-ish woman hanging around, people were confused. Everyone knew she wasn't part of the family, but no one would dare to say anything. Finally an aunt had some small talk with her and learned who she was. Turns out she was his daughter from when he cheated on his wife. No one even knew he had an affair, much less a daughter from it. I don't know who I feel worse for, the aunt or the daughter. I worked as this middleman between state govt and the company I worked for. We did contract work for the govt. I got this email saying they wanted to meet with us to discuss some work activities and to nominate a delegate. Manager suggests it would be good exposure to send the team and their leader down. I went with them for support. The govt delegate had us in a room and said I wasn't expecting everyone to turn up. We were intending to let you know we're not funding this team anymore. We back and shared that we were pushed in front of a bus. I was the only person who went back to work. The rest of the team took the day off. A coworker of mine was arrested and escorted out of Lowe's because he stole over $3,000 in the cash office. He was a head cashier. Fast forward to later on that year where he was hired as a financial aid advisor at Mount St. Mary's College. Then they promoted him. Imagine having a financial aid officer at a university, only to find out they are handling your financial aid package, but was arrested for theft. This college claims to run background checks. Fun fact, many companies claim they run checks but don't. They have you fill out the form but it just gets filed. The idea is you will be truthful when you have to sign a form saying you are allowing this third party access to your record. Someone in one of my classes cheated on the teacher's daughter, whom he was seeing. Must say you could cut the tension with a knife in those classes. Had a similar situation happen to me. My teacher set me up with her daughter and I had to end it after 2 weeks. I'd like to think I failed that class because of it, but most likely it was because I suck at maths. I went to pick something up at my friend's house and I walked in on my friend's dad watching people bump their nasties in the living room while everyone was out shopping. I didn't know what to say or do, so I pet the dog as he put his junk away. Later on that evening we gathered for my friend's mom's birthday dinner. When the dad came in they were like, "Where were you earlier? You didn't pick up your phone." It was just the absolute weirdest, most uncomfortable moment of my life. My family was eating dinner when I was still home a little over a month ago and my mom asked my dad, brother, and I to describe her in 3 words. None of us said anything because my mom is a total Karen, and even my bro, the golden child, thought she was a horrid parent. She described herself as great mother, kind person, and pretty. My bro and I said I thought you could only use 3 words. That's 5. The sad part is what we said went right over her head. Met a dude who insisted he didn't do drugs, was definitely on MDMA, and he was lovely F. Introduced himself one-on-one with a hug to our whole crew, then asked to rap his OC for us. We hesitantly agreed to listen. I only remember one line, "My dong breaks lumbers. Who cares if you're 15 and I'm 21, they just numbers." Username checks out. Just an hour ago, my lady and mother-in-law came back home with the kids from an outing. My father-in-law came over shortly after. They've been divorced for quite some time and I've never seen them in one room before. I excused myself to do yard work after he gave me the firmest and longest handshake he's ever given me. So years ago I attended a staff meeting where my staff and I ran a bar in a hotel we introduced to the new manager, my replacement. I was told nothing except to show him the ropes. At the end of my shift I'm told my replacement the GM wants to talk to me and fires me. My co-workers and customers were pissed. I was okay because I got a good severance. So over the next week, I'm wooed by the previous GM to come and work for him at another hotel. This is where it gets better. A year or two later, I'm sent by the hotel to attend a management training seminar. And you guessed it, it's being led by the firing Grams. So, I'm telling my group during a break what this guy did to me and we're all laughing. We come back and the next subject is on how to fire someone. The looks and stifled chuckles were palpable. I had to tell a co-worker, whose wedding I was supposed to stand in, that her fiance was cheating on her with some sheik we all worked with. It was terrible business but she had to know. You did the right thing. Hope she didn't shoot the messenger. My girlfriend broke up with me, and she told all my friends and my sister. Before she told me, I didn't find out until 2 weeks after we broke up that we had broken up. Bet she was in butt of a GF. Had a gay, important for context, VP who vilified a Jewish, important for context, co-worker for speaking up because the VP was being an asshole during our meetings. The VP did all he could to make our co-worker's life miserable. I would find him crying at his desk. He, co-worker, was out for a month because he was suffering from neurological issues. During the time our VP did everything in his power to fire him. When co-worker returned he was already looking for another job within the company, large compact with many branches, and found out VP was calling everywhere telling folks not to hire this man. Finally he left. Last month VP mandated that we all sit in 4-day 6-hour meetings about critical race theory. He talked about how important it was to feel heard, be a co-conspirator for others, speak up for those who can't when the situation happens and not after the fact, confront the attacker regardless of power structure and not hold back because of gender, race, sexuality, etc etc. We all sat there fuming because the elephant's butt was in our face and making it hard to breathe. The LA, it's only okay when I do it. I accompanied a date to her company's Christmas party at a fancy steak restaurant. This was during the 2008 downturn and I knew from conversations with her that many of the people in the room and probably most of the people at our table were not going to have jobs after the new year. Her boss just didn't want to ruin people's Christmas so he waited another month despite really needing to offload people months prior. I worked an IT team for years for a company, fixed laptops etc. We found CP on a manager's laptop and reported it. Took days for HR to get their crap together and sack him and told to keep quiet. Company drinks that Friday night was pretty bad as only the whole IT team knew what was coming to get him. This manager is giving his usual holier than thou speech to everyone and we are all staring daggers at this scum trying to keep our mouths shut. He was gone by Monday. My cousin is a nurse and she had this particularly difficult patient. The patient was a woman who was heavily overweight. It was the cause of all her medical conditions but even so she was very defensive about it and would not talk about it. My cousin still had to try and bring it up so she said okay, let me address the elephant in the room. The patient went apeshit because she thought she was being called an elephant lol. I know a preacher who married a former prostitute who already had a son. Her son looks just like him even though they're unrelated. Everyone knows that's his biological son, except his son, who thinks he was adopted, and his son's wife, who is clearly in denial. At that point, let sleeping dogs lie. My sister told my parents that I am gay. I didn't knew they knew until 2 days later. My dad talked to me and told me about it. In middle school we went to our outdoor week-long camping trip. And a few days in all the students were brought in for an assembly. The principal came in and told us that majority of our 8th grade teachers were getting let go because they apparently obtained copies of statewide tests and distributed them as practice sheets. Kids' teachers started crying and it was a pretty crappy environment for the last few days. Could you clarify? I don't really understand. A good friend I had in college was definitely gay, but in total denial. He was a proud conservative and would loudly voice his opinion that homosexuality was a sin. Gay guys would chat him up at parties and he would just be totally oblivious, thinking that they were truly just interested in his major or whatever. Then inevitably they would ask him out or something, and he would get so mad and come crying to me. I distinctly remember him wailing in my dorm room as I hugged him. Why does everyone always think I'm gay? I just tried to be sympathetic, while also advocating that there was nothing wrong with homosexuality. I never tried to convince him that he was or anything. Not my place. And I knew he was heavily resistant to the idea. Later on in college he came to me very upset. He had gotten very drunk with some guys and basically had sex with them. He was crying so much and I kept asking him if it was rape and did we need to report it. But he never said it was rape. He said he was willing, but he was just so drunk and he was sure it was the alcohol. Fast forward about 10 years. He joined the Navy, came out as gay, and has a boyfriend. We haven't talked since college, but I'm so happy he finally feels comfortable being who he is and has accepted himself. That sucks that it took him 10 years to accept himself. Internalized homophobia is a B. A cousin's child with certain mental issues. Not too apparent for it to be too obvious, so no one ever talks about it, but still apparent enough that everyone can notice it. Not to go off topic too much, but I couldn't help but think of my haircut place. The nicest lady gave me the worst haircut. It was awkward when I requested another stylist. Got hired for a gov job, fresh out of uni. Being me, I show up early to the job and one of the assistants shows me to my desk. When we enter the area where I'd be, there are 4 workers surrounding one worker who was crying uncontrollably on my new desk. Turns out she was fired and I was the person to replace her. Her death stare still haunts me to this day. My brother-in-law wears the most obvious toupee ever created and has done for years. Seriously looks like an upturned bird's nest. One Thanksgiving we're all sitting around after dinner and during a quiet pause my dim-witted brother announces, "Doug, it almost looks like you're wearing a wig," and cue the crickets. In a sweet 16 dinner party some years ago the whole classroom were invited. The grandfather of the lady was ready to make a toast and he was praising her granddaughter so proudly, then he said some words like "You are so pure an angel." Then the boyfriend of the girl, a little tipsy, start low laugh really loud and said, "Peri, I bang her brains out all the time." Awkward silence took over. The boyfriend must surely lie awake at night reliving that. Finally, a question I can contribute to. My roommate recently broke up with a mutual friend of me, her and the other roommate. A few weeks later both my roommates started taking suspiciously long walks at late hours. Not really that uncommon with us, because we all are pretty close. But still, we were at the beach and stuff, and when I saw them sitting side by side it was already kind of obvious something is going on between them. Last weekend, when we came back from another beach trip, we wanted to watch a movie together. I prepared something to eat in the kitchen and they were chilling in the other room. Well, when I came back to ask something they had pretty much no clothes on anymore. Also not that uncommon in our group. Laid in bed and their eyes said it all, even though they tried to do their best to hide it. It was actually hilarious how they tried to casually talk with me about the burgers I was making. When I came back the next time they were full on making out with each other. I said, "Well, the burgers are in the kitchen, if you want some." A few minutes later they came back and still didn't want to talk about the obvious until I asked them if they are a thing now. Now I am a constant third wheel in our shared apartment. The best thing about this is that apparently I catched them just a day after they started freaking XD. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.